Welcome back to our studios here in Lahore. I'm Hamza Amjad, and let's begin the bulletin with the US President Donald Trump, who says he will stop the sale of advanced F-35 fighter jets to Turkey. Ankara began receiving the Russian S-400 missile defense system last week, despite US warnings. Now, Trump says Turkey can't have both American F-35s and Russian S-400s. But he stopped short of imposing any sanctions on his NATO ally over its equipment purchase. The US president says the situation was highly complicated and tough for both Ankara and Washington. Trump says he has good relations with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. Earlier, the Secretary of Defense nominee Mark Esper called the Ankara deal with Russia disappointing. Iran has rejected suggestions it is willing to discuss its missile program with the US. A spokesman for Iran's UN mission, Alireza Mir Youssef, says the weapons are absolutely non-negotiable under any circumstance. The denial comes after Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif suggested in an interview that the missiles could be up for discussion if sanctions are lifted. Mir Youssef says Tehran rejects the characterization of the foreign minister's interview. He accused the US media of drawing a false conclusion in pursuit of headlines. Meanwhile, Tehran has rejected allegations that it seized a UAE oil tanker, saying its navy helped repair the damaged vessel in the Persian Gulf. The statement comes after US media reported Iran had seized the UAE-based ship. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Mousavi says Iran provided assistance to the vessel after receiving a request for help. Mousavi has not named the tanker and says more information will be released later. Tensions in the Gulf are high since Britain's recent seizure of an Iranian oil tanker, alleging it was carrying oil to Syria. While world powers have called for an immediate end to the ongoing violence in Tripoli, a joint statement by Egypt, France, Italy, the UAE, the UK and the US was issued by Britain's Foreign Office. The six said there can be no military solution in Libya and called for the UN mediation to form a transitional government. Meanwhile, the UN envoy to Libya, Ghassan Salameh, also raised concerns over the situation in Tripoli. In a meeting with the UAE Foreign Minister in Abu Dhabi, Salameh discussed ways to end the conflict. The ongoing violence between Khalifa Haftar's forces and the UN-backed government has caused a humanitarian crisis. The violence has claimed over 1,000 lives and displaced nearly 100,000 people. While the Saudi-led coalition says it intercepted 3 drones launched by Yemen's Houthis at the cities of Abha and Jazan near the kingdom's border. In a statement to the Saudi press agency, coalition spokesperson Colonel Tukri al-Maliki said the UAVs were destroyed in Yemeni airspace. Al-Maliki says actions will be taken against rebels in accordance with international humanitarian law. Earlier, Houthis said they launched drone attacks at Jazan Airport and the King Khalid Airbase near Abha. The Houthi military spokesman says the attacks targeted aircraft hangars and other military facilities at the airport. While the US has announced sanctions on Myanmar's military commander-in-chief Min Aung Hlaing and other military leaders. The sanctions, which also cover Hlaing's deputy and 2 other senior commanders, are the strongest the US has taken against the country. Now, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the comment while meeting Rohingya representatives at a conference on religious freedom in Washington. The Secretary of State said steps have been taken over the extrajudicial killings of Rohingya Muslims. He said the US is concerned over Myanmar's lack of action against human rights violations across the country. But Pompeo stopped short of calling what happened to the Rohingya genocide. And the US House of Representatives has condemned President Donald Trump's racist comments against 4 congresswomen. In a tweet, President Trump told the 4 minority Democrat women to go back to their country. The House passed a resolution calling Trump's action racist and xenophobic by a majority vote. 4 Republicans and 1 independent joined the Democrats to support the resolution. The resolution says Trump's remarks have legitimized fear and hatred against people of color.
Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is unfit to be president, unfit to represent the American values of decency and morality, respectability and civility, honesty and propriety.
Other nations, including Britain and New Zealand, also condemned Trump's racist remarks. Now, Germany's Ursula von der Leyen has won the parliamentary approval to become the first female European Commission president. Von der Leyen was confirmed by a margin of 383 to 327 votes. Following a protected nomination process, the European Commission has appointed its new presidents. The former German defense minister won over the socialists and liberals with her vision of a greener and fairer Europe. Von der Leyen inherits a bloc divided over climate change, trade, and its stuttering cohesion.
The trust you placed in me is confidence you placed in Europe. Your confidence in a united and a strong Europe, from east to west, from south to north. Your confidence in a Europe that is ready to fight for the future, rather than fighting against each other.
Congratulating her ally, German Chancellor Angela Merkel called von der Leyen a committed European. And now let's move on. The EU trade chief says the appeals court of the World Trade Organization faces a temporary collapse in the wake of US opposition to the nomination of judges. US President Donald Trump has blocked new appointments to the 7-member appeals body. Trump accuses judges of overstepping their mandate and ignoring instructions. The tribunal could be reduced to 1 judge if the US block is not lifted. A 1-judge tribunal won't, however, be able to hear new cases.
The organization is in deep crisis. We have to realize this. If the appellate body collapses, which probably it will, in December, at least temporarily, we will have no enforcement. And then, if you have no rules, everybody can do whatever they want, and that would be really, really bad, not least for the smaller countries and the developing countries.
The EU has proposed using the WTOs arbitration rules to set up a shadow version of the court and keep the appeals process moving. Moving on, France has selected Elisabeth Borne to replace the nation's Environment Minister, Francois de Ruy. He resigned following uproar over reports that he spent taxpayers' money on a lavish lifestyle and love for lobster dinners. The minister says increased media scrutiny and subsequent attacks on his family forced him to resign. He handed his resignation to French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe. De Ruy was the second highest ranked official in the government. French media claimed De Ruy hosted lavish dinners at the taxpayers' expense while he served as president of the lower house of the parliament. Let's head to Thailand, where Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha's new cabinet has just been sworn in at a ceremony overseen by King Maha Vajiralongkorn. Prayut seized power in a 2014 military coup. Prime Minister Prayut has declared an end to 5 years of military rule, saying the country must now function as a normal democracy. Prayut and his 35 ministers pledged loyalty to the monarchy at the Dusit Palace. Former junta chief Prayut says the 2014 coup was necessary to restore order after 6 months of protests and violent clashes. He says life is returning to normal after the March elections. It took Prayut more than 100 days to form the cabinet. Well, at The Hague, the International Court of Justice will announce its verdict on Indian spy Kulbhushan Jadhav today. He was arrested in March 2016 while trying to illegally enter Pakistan from Iran. Now, Kulbhushan's documents subsequently proved him to be an officer of the Indian Navy. Passports recovered from Jadhav showed his businessman's identity was a fake. During the trial at The Hague, India's lawyers failed to answer questions around Jadhav's dual passport identities. The Indian agent confessed to espionage and committing acts of terrorism during investigations in Pakistan. He said the chief of India's external intelligence agency, RAW, was directly involved in planning and aiding sectarian and ethnic violence in Pakistan.
I was stationed in Chabar, the Iranian port city, under a fictitious name, Hussain Mubarak Patel, and I was running a business there, Kanmida Trading Company. It was a discreet, non-embassy based operation, exclusively meant to conduct meetings with Baloch insurgents and terrorists. The aim of these meetings was always to see that the aims and the targets of RAW to conduct the various terrorist activities within Balochistan are conveyed properly to the insurgents, and any kinds of requirements of them are conveyed back to the RAW officials.
Jadhav also confessed to helping the movement of arms and personnel into Pakistan by sea to support separatists in the southwest Balochistan province. And now let's move on to India, where 13 people have been killed and 3 still feared trapped under rubble after a 4-story building collapsed in Mumbai. Officials say 10 others have been injured in the accident. The officials say the National Disaster Response Force and the police are trying to dig out survivors. Mumbai Police spokesperson DCP Manjunath Singh says 3 people, including a child, have been rescued so far. The 100-year-old structure was reportedly not in the list of dangerous buildings released each year before the start of the monsoon season. Right, and with that, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere, more stories to follow. Welcome back. Now, Benin is preparing for the return of 26 pieces of its cultural heritage taken by French colonizers in 1892. The display cases at the royal palaces in Benin's southern town of Abomi are coated in dust and the exhibition halls plunged in darkness. Local tourism chief Gabin Gimas says this will change when the 26 artifacts are returned from France and a new museum is built. Gimas hopes the objects will with the survival of the site. President Emmanuel Macron decided in November last year to return the artifacts. The move has increased pressure on other former colonial powers to return looted artifacts to their countries of origin. Well, the World Bank says Malawi is one of the 10 countries most vulnerable to climate change. Human activity is already having a significant impact on the country's natural resources. Now, marine life in Lake Malawi, which has a number of unique fish species, is dying out. Senga Bay on the coast of Lake Malawi is home to 14,000 people, most of whom are fishermen. But many of them are struggling to make ends meet due to a shrinking fish population.
It was easy to catch fish in the past, but these days people find it difficult. They can go fishing in the evening and return in the morning with only 2 tins. Fish are now scarce.
Smaller hauls mean fish is now more expensive and fewer people are buying it. Many Senga Bay residents have pulled their kids from school because they were unable to pay the fees. Locals blame climate change for the economic slowdown.
These days, the rain pattern has changed. Rains cause different forms of damage, yet in the past we had good rains. This is an indication of climate change.
Poverty is worsening the problem, as starving fishermen have now begun hauling younger fish. The practice is causing fish numbers to shrink even further.
People kill the smaller fish out of poverty. Fishing is their only source of income. They are able to buy food only after selling the fish. That's why they kill even the smaller fish.
A non-governmental organization, Leadership for Environment and Development, warns that extreme weather events are happening more frequently in Malawi. That could spell disaster for the country, which has a mostly agriculture-based economy. While the Pew Research Center says religious restrictions are on the rise globally amid increasing violence and harassment of followers, A report says social hostilities rose in both authoritarian countries and liberal democracies between 2007 and 2017. Cases of harassment against Christians emerged in 143 countries and against Muslims in 140 nations. The hostilities include violence and harassment by private individuals and groups. The report says that the largest increases in hostility towards religion occurred in Europe and the Middle East, North Africa region. It says 52 governments imposed either high or very high levels of restrictions on religious activities. This is up from 40 states in 2007. Policies curbing religious freedom and government favoritism of religious groups are reportedly the most prevalent restrictions. Well, the 2019 Emmy nominations have been revealed in Los Angeles. The final season of Game of Thrones picked up a whopping 32 nominations, shattering the record for the most nods for a show in a single year. Amazon's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel took 20 nominations, while HBO's Chernobyl earned 19. Game of Thrones' Kit Harington and Better Call Saul's Bob Odenkirk, among others, have been nominated for lead actor in drama. For outstanding lead actress in a drama series, Game of Thrones' Emilia Clarke and Killing Eve's Sandra Oh, among others, have been nominated. The ceremony will take place in LA on September the 22nd. Well, first up in the world of business, Christine Lagarde has stepped down from the International Monetary Fund. She has been nominated for the post of the European Central Bank's president in the recent EU summit. Her resignation takes effect on September the 12th. Lagarde's nomination is subject to approval by a fractious European Parliament. If accepted, she will take over as the European Central Bank's president on October the 31st. Lagarde is widely expected to continue her predecessor Mario Draghi's policy of loose monetary controls. The IMF succession will be discussed among G7 finance ministers and central bank governors at a meeting in France today. Leading candidates including the Bank of England's governor Mark Carney and Jens Weidmann, the head of Germany's Bundesbank. Let's take a look at stocks. Asian stock markets have fallen after renewed uncertainty over US-China trade. This follows President Donald Trump again threatening China with additional tariffs. The market reacted swiftly to US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's statement that Iran is ready to negotiate over its missile program. Mainland Chinese shares have declined marginally, while Japan's Nikkei, South Korea's Kospi and Hong Kong's Hang Seng indices also fell. Australia's ASX 200 rose against all the trends in Asian trading. Meanwhile, Singapore's exports have dropped more than expected in June, marking their biggest decline in 6 years. Oil prices are treading water in Asian trading after witnessing a sharp decline on Tuesday. The dollar stood firm amid expectations that the US Central Bank's interest rate could be cut later this month. First up in sports, let's talk about the World Swimming Championship. Brazil's Ana Marcelo has won the gold medal in the women's 5,000 meters in Gwangju. France's Aurélie Muller claimed silver, while Hannah Moore of the US and Germany's Leonie Beck both took bronze medals. Marcelo surged in the final 2 kilometers to touch for gold in 57 minutes and 57 seconds. French swimmer Aurélie Muller finished a second behind Marcelo in silver for the second consecutive time. Moore claimed the third spot, but the photo finish between her and Beck turned out to be a tie. Both swimmers share the bronze medal. Italian football club Fiorentina have won the opening match of the International Champions Cup. They defeated Mexico's Guadalajara by 2-1. Playing at Illinois' Toyota Park, Guadalajara's midfielder Javier Lopez scored the opening goal in the 25th minute, but it was instantly cancelled out by a short-range goal from Fiorentina striker Giovanni Simeone. Ricardo Saudiled scored the decider in the 52nd minute. Fiorentina will play their next match against Arsenal on Saturday. Paris Saint-Germain have completed their signing of defender Abdou Diallo from Borussia Dortmund. PSG have paid €32 million to secure his services until 2024. The Frenchman, who came through the ranks at Monaco, arrived at Dortmund from Mainz last summer. He made 38 appearances in all competitions for the German club. The 23-year-old has been capped frequently at age grade level by France, but never for the senior side. Well, British boxer Amir has made a deal to fight Filipino Manny Pacquiao in Saudi Arabia this November. Khan has recently won the WBC International Welterweight title by defeating Australian Billy Dibb in Jeddah. Boxer Amir Khan plans to return to Saudi Arabia if Pacquiao comes through unscathed against America's Keith Thurman. Pacquiao has his 71st professional bout this weekend when he takes on Thurman for the WBA welterweight title. The former world champion has yet to publicly confirm the November clash. Khan says it is going to be a big fight in the Middle East. Pacquiao has 61 wins, 7 defeats and 2 draws in a 24-year-old professional career, while Khan has 34 wins and 5 defeats. Well, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that was all I have from the Bulletin at the moment, but do stay tuned to Indus News for further updates. And as always, thanks for watching.